Hello everyone and welcome back to Spar&Brawl. On the 29th of October, the UK's Labour Party announced that they have officially suspended Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn was of course their leader during the last election in which they lost to Boris Johnson's party. The allegations, this suspension is due to anti-Semitism allegations, and of course it goes way back. It is not limited to the past week. But I wanted to start off with Sam telling us a little bit about what happened exactly this week, which got Corbyn suspended. Corbyn joined the Labour Party 55 years ago, and for many, at least outside of the UK, he's kind of synonymous with Britain's Labour Party, at least over the past few years. So Sam, before getting into the historical context and overview, just tell us a little bit exactly what happened the past week.
Sure, of course. Um, this was the whole ordeal basically started with a release of a report, which was this report was done by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, and this was a report into anti-Semitism allegations within the Labour Party, because since Jeremy Corbyn became the Labour Party leader, there was there was a sustained series of allegations that there is a culture of anti-Semitism within the party, which has basically affected many of the Jewish members of the party. It pretty much started immediately after Jeremy Corbyn became the leader of the party, but this commission's report was, I think they only started their investigations in May 2019. And they released the report in which I'm just gonna give you basically a bullet point conclusions of the report, but they they concluded that there was a culture of anti-Semitism was still an issue within the Labour Party. It was not perhaps the biggest issue, but they found Labour responsible for 3 breaches of the Equality Act: political interference in anti-Semitism complaints. So they argued that basically the leader's office, the HQ, so to speak, they have interfered with the way complaints were handled in regards to anti-Semitism. There was interference from the head office into the HR, I suppose, of the party, which should be independent. Second breach: failure to provide adequate training to those handling anti-Semitism complaints. And breach number 3: harassment, including the use of anti-Semitic tropes and suggesting that complaints of anti-Semitism were fake or smears. So basically, the third one refers to use of hate speech or anti-Semitic tropes against Jewish people, as well as arguments that, anti-Semitism is all made up, it's all in people's head, it's only being used to smear certain people, or blah blah blah. So they found that Labour Party was in the breach of these three aspects of the Equality Act. So when they did release this report, Jeremy Corbyn, this report was done about the time Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party, before the current leader, Keir Starmer, who started only about, I think, 10 months ago, following the defeat of the Labour Party in the last election. So Jeremy Corbyn responded to the report by basically I don't know if he tweeted or if it was a Facebook post, in which he did accept that there was anti-Semitism within the party, and he did, I believe this is a direct quote, that he said one anti-Semite is too many within the Labour Party. So he did accept that there is anti-Semitism within the party and it needs to be eradicated. But he also said that the extent of the problem was greatly exaggerated by political opponents within and outside of the Labour Party, as well as the most of the media. Jeremy Corbyn, much like Trump in many ways, and much like Boris Johnson in many ways, and much like many political leaders that are coming to power these days, he had a very fraught relationship with the press. So this was not surprising in many ways. His response was sort of expected.
So he didn't get the Biden treatment, pretty much.
No, he never got the Biden treatment. No. He got the Bernie Sanders treatment. He didn't even get the Trump treatment because, yeah, there is a great hatred for him among the British political class, basically. But let's get into the details somewhat of this specific report, because to be honest, it is quite interesting. I haven't read the full report. I did read segments of it, but I read some other people who read the report and made commentaries. Novara Media does a great analysis of the report. The first breach, which is political interference in anti-Semitism complaints, that's a really interesting one, because the political interference they're referring to was actually Labour's office, Jeremy Corbyn's office, interfering and contacting the people who were handling the complaints and asking them to speed up the process, to basically get a move on things, because some of the complaints were not being handled in a timely manner, and there were a great many complaints that were not even handled. I believe about 500 complaints were not even looked at or something.
Wow, there were that many complaints.
Oh yeah. There were quite a lot. And but I mean, this was over a course of significant amount of time, and it was more of a reflection of this old bureaucracy that was not handling the complaints properly. So, the way it's been reported, and the way, for example, I'm reading this from BBC right now, the quotes, right? The way it's been reported and the way it's been outlined, political interference in anti-Semitism complaints kind of implies that Jeremy Corbyn's office was interfering to, say, for example, a couple of people, for example, Naz Shah and Ken Livingstone, Labour members who were suspended for making anti-Semitic statements. For example, it is kind of implied that he was interfering to shield them, perhaps, from punishment, while it seems it was the opposite. They were interfering, perhaps for political reasons, perhaps because anti-Semitism had become a major issue in the press, so they were trying to speed up the process. But the Equality Commission found that to be a wrong move, because it's basically political interference. Any political interference is wrong, although I think it's a important thing to mention that it was to speed up the process, not to shield people from.
At least that's what Labour is saying.
That's what the report is saying.
Oh,
that's
even
what
the report is saying that.
Yes, that's in the report. Yeah. That's what I read in the commentaries, and if I'm mistaken, please correct me. I'm gonna try to read the full report as soon as I can, but I'm pretty sure that's what the report is saying. That the cases of political interference were largely to why is not the cases being handled, what happened to that case, why has this taken so long, that type of thing. Actually,
these are allegations. I mean, some of them are from different members of the Labour Party making it towards other members of the Labour Party, or maybe the public, or who has filed all these allegations, or some of them. I mean, yeah.
They are you. I believe I'm to be honest, I didn't really look into the mechanism of it specifically, but I believe they are complaints made by Labour Party members, including grassroots members. Labour Party this actually goes a bit into the history of the whole ordeal because
Yeah, so right now, so far, you've talked about what's happened the last week and in the report, which covers only the period while Jeremy Corbyn was the leader. But this allegations of anti-Semitism, both towards the party and towards Jeremy Corbyn, go back even almost 2 decades, or
let's
if I'm
yeah, let's, before we jump into the history of the thing, let's finish this thing in a rounded way so this can be actually one video for people who just perhaps want to know the news. Let's just say this, that by the way, now people currently following Jeremy Corbyn's response, he was suspended from the party by David Owens, the general secretary of the party, right? And this was, by the way, following a speech made by the new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who gave this speech saying that he accepts all the report's recommendations and he does not tolerate, he has a zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, and he said that if you if you, as the report said, if you argue that anti-Semitism is just something used to smear people, if you think it's all exaggerated, you are part of the problem. Uh, you are in a way, playing into a anti-Semitic trope. He gave that speech, then there was the Corbyn response, and then the suspension from the party. And now many argue that the Labour Party has basically fell into a civil war, which was something that Keir Starmer, when he did became the leader, specifically said wanted to avoid. He said he's the unity candidate. He was supposed to bring the left and right of the party together, but now because of the actions of him, the party is back into a civil war, basically, but possibly. And it is very interesting that now, in fact, Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters are looking into a legal action against the party because, as I mentioned, they said Keir Starmer said he accepts the recommendations of the report and all its conclusions. And one of their conclusion was that political interference from headquarters into uh, into uh, into disciplinary action against members is not allowed, basically, is wrong, it's unethical, it's abuse of power, whatever you want to call it. And Jeremy Corbyn's suspension, him and his supporters are starting to argue, is a exact uh, is an exact case of that. It is basically the general secretary and the leader are interfering in the disciplinary process. So in a way, he's contradicting himself in less than a few hours, and he has led to a, what can you say, reignation of the old civil war within the party between the left wing of the party and the right wing of the party, which increasingly Keir Starmer seems to represent. Somebody who came into power by basically adopting Jeremy Corbyn's policies while adopting a more urbanized, more high, more establishment friendly attitude, or way of communicating with the press. So this is quite disappointing from at least my perspective. This
Well,
is
it's a
quite
good time for them to actually, to have a little mini civil war within the party, right? Because there aren't going to be elections for a few years. I mean, it's better if they can somehow deal with this issue at least seriously once and for all. Well, not once and for all, but not let it just linger and then reemerge in 2 3 years whenever there's another general election.
sure. Perhaps that's a good point. That's a good point. But I would say that the situation. Some people are saying this is like the worst it's ever been, and many people. I believe Ian Avery, which is I believe he's a Jewish member of the Labour Party, and he's a strong supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. He said he had talks with many Labour Party members and a lot of on the left, and they are feel they. This is, by the way, there there was a within the Labour Party there was another candidate for the leadership, Rebecca Long Bailey, who was seen as more on the Jeremy Corbyn camp. And in the beginning, Keir Starmer included her in the shadow cabinet. A few months ago, over a really insignificant tweet, I believe. Again, I don't know if it was related to anti-Semitism or racism in general, but it was genuinely, in my view, it was overblown. She was basically fired from the shadow cabinet, and now this, and Keir Starmer's basically has dialed down his uh, basically economic left-wing economic policies quite a bit recently. So all of this is signaling to a lot of left-wing members of the parliament that there is a purge going on, and they said that many of them may even stand as independent Labour instead of Labour. So yeah, and Len McCluskey, who's head of the biggest union that gives the biggest amount of funding to the Labour Party, he was very worried about this decision by Keir Starmer and the uh, uh, party leaders at the moment. So the situation doesn't seem good. And when we get into the history of it, I'll say why I'm not too optimistic about the whole thing. But yeah, that's what happened this week. Basically, the report by the Equality Human Rights Commission came out. There was a response from the former Labour leader, and a suspension followed, which seemed to contradict Labour's acceptance of the conclusions of the report. And the fallout is going to continue. Jeremy Corbyn has appealed the decision. So right now it's in the appeal process. We'll see what happens.